Welcome to the No Sports Report, a production of iHeartRadio and Treefort Media. Small note, this episode was recorded prior to the murder of George Floyd and the resulting global reaction and protests, which is the only reason it's not mentioned. Something to keep in mind while listening. My name is Jensen Karp and I'm a sports fan, but I'm also hesitant. Hesitant to really admit that sports is back, because even though we're seeing some of our favorites return to the field or racetrack or possibly even court, I won't really believe it till I see it. Sure, the NBA says they'll be at Disney World, but then you hear about a dozen players questioning how safe they'll be, which makes sense, because I won't be going to see Croods 2 or a shirtless Pete Davidson or whatever showing in a theater until I know it's safe. And I don't expect the guy on the Brooklyn Nets to feel any differently. Life is scary, man. I don't blame you for being nervous. So to learn more, I'm talking to athletes and sports industry professionals about what they're doing during this crazy time, hoping to figure out if they miss competing as much as I miss watching it. This is the No Sports Report with Some Sports Now. COVID-19 caused a ripple effect in sports broadcasting like we've never seen before, and producer Molly Solomon was front and center to experience the damage. The 11-time Emmy winner not only is the current executive VP of content and executive producer for the Golf Channel, which saw the sport and its name completely shut down, but boy, did she sign up for quite a gig as the president of NBC's presentation of the 2020, now 2021 Tokyo Olympics. She'd already helped push the coverage to its highest ratings in 23 years, leading Beijing in '08, Vancouver in 2010, and London in 2012, but nothing could have prepared her for a global audible. We talk about what changes she'll have to implement with the delay, how golf will be without people yelling Howard Stern catchphrases during tee-off, and another challenge she's facing, raising 16-year-old triplets in a quarantine. And I check in with actor Luka Jones from People of Earth and Shrill to talk about missing seeing KU possibly win it all, and we ramble about Andrew Wiggins a bunch for another installment of FANDEMIC. It's all inching back, baby, but I'm scared as hell. It's the No Sports Report with Some Sports Now.
Call from
Molly Solomon.
Hello, Molly.
Hello.
Well, I wanted to start off by asking you where you are quarantining and how you have been doing.
Well, I am quarantining in Winter Park, Florida, which is just outside of Orlando, and Golf Channel is based in Orlando. So my family and I have been living down here for 8 years. So when the pandemic hit, I was actually upstate at the Players Championship in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. But of course, they canceled the second round. We came back down here, and we've been here. Are we on week 12 or week 13 of quarantine? But I feel really lucky to be quarantined in Florida with my family because, I talk to my friends that are in New York City, and, to be stuck in a studio apartment would just be really, really tough. So we don't have it tough, and the golf clubs are open down here.
Well, number one, you do have it tough. Do not let people who are listening think you have it easy. You are the mother of triplet 16-year-olds.
Yeah, I think my triplets hit the quarantine wall this week. They're like, I gotta get out, I gotta go to the gym, I gotta get my nails done, I gotta see my friends, and living at home with them because my son goes to boarding school, but he's home. The other two girls are here, and oh my gosh, they're up till like 3:00 in the morning. I forgot the circadian rhythms change for teens. Like they are up so late, and they're just like stalking each other and fighting, and it's a little bit of a zoo here, I have to tell you, Jensen.
Yeah, I mean, how do you lock down a 16-year-old, let alone three of them? Are you homeschooling them?
No, but I listen, we've got it easy compared to, all those parents out there that have preschoolers and first graders and even third graders in the middle, in the Northeast or, with bad weather and stuff. No, they're good. They're virtual learning. Although the irony of all this is, right, you've always tried for 16 years to control the number of hours they're on their phones, right. They're on their iPads. And now we're like, go to it. See you tonight at 6 for dinner.
I have a friend who had a no computer rule for his, I think, 7-year-olds, a true no computer, no screens rule, and it was completely thrown out the window. They now have screens. That's how they learn. And they've said they were pleasantly surprised by it.
Yes. And you know what? My kids at times, it's just a different generation in that even their interaction and they Google Hangout all the time. And that's how, even when they're doing homework, they're talking to their friends, they're doing homework together via group chat. But it's all above board. They're not cheating. But, even like the stress of my kids taking their advanced placement U.S. history test, we had to go through this whole rigmarole. Okay, how do you upload your test? And you have to upload starting at this time. And then, 2% of the kids or 4% weren't able to upload their test and have to take it again in June. Like there's also stress associated with all this, but then there's also been the times when I rushed into their room and kind of Zoom bombed their classes by accident, and they're just mortified because 16-year-olds are mortified by their parents anyway. So then I Zoom bomb their classes, and it's just awful. They're like, Mom, no.
You're supposed to drop them off 3 blocks away. You're not supposed to walk into the Zoom.
No, and not wearing your spandex from working out on the Peloton either. No, not cool. Not cool for me, not cool for them.
No, Mom, you've ruined it all. Well, you make television, specifically live sports. So consistently when the world is fully functional, that's what you do. But what happens when everything you do professionally just stops?
It's been fascinating. And, when the innovation that's happened at NBC Sports and all the networks and what we've done, I'll just, putting the Olympics aside, I'll talk about my job at Golf Channel. And, the first few weeks, we kind of went dormant in that we immediately put replays on the air. And then the second week, we're like, wait a second, we coined a new phrase, watch along. Now let's enhance the replays because there's no tournament. So let's have the defending champion call in and let's incorporate that into the broadcast. I'm sure some of your listeners, watched the Masters with, Tiger calling in, or we did the Augusta National Women's Amateur where we had Maria Fassi and Jennifer Kupcho. And every week on the PGA Tour, we're doing that. So every week we got creative, but the bigger point was that we were doing this all from home because we immediately shut down the facility because one, we wanted it to be pristine and ready and clean in quotes when we did come back to work, but we also wanted to protect the employees most of all. So we shut down all production except for essential engineering folks that needed to go into the building. And our engineering team built virtual control rooms. And equally so, at NBC Sports, we're editing features for sports. We're editing shows from home, and everything takes a lot longer. So all of our patience has been tested, but I'm so darn proud of what everyone has done in terms of leaning in, doing their job, working harder. And also, we've learned so many lessons about producing content during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys have done a great job. And truthfully, golf is one of the few sports that is built for social distancing. The PGA is set to return on June 11th. Are you confident with the regulations that are being set for this comeback? Like, you're obviously very connected to it. Have you felt pretty stable with the concepts?
Golf by nature can be socially distant. So you think about the competition itself it's not a big pull for any of us to figure out how to do that. But I would say the harder part of all this is golf production, because we always say it's not following one basketball or one hockey puck, right? You have 18 holes at times that are all ongoing and have players on them. So how are you going to cover that? Because the average PGA Tour production and engineering crew is close to 140 people. Wow. You can't have that many people together, not at this stage of what we're fighting. You've probably seen pictures of all these packed production trucks. You've got to space everybody out. You can't have that producer leaning into the director and, talking about where they're going next and what they're going to do. You've got to space everybody out. Sure. And so there's a lot of planning that's going to go on. We're going to learn a lot the first week. Golf Channel also has in June a developmental tour called the Corn Ferry Tour, which, will just use 8 cameras, but it has to have a whole different production plan. And you've got to be thermal screening everybody that comes into that compound. And then you've got to have a plan if someone gets ill. And I think a great part about being part of the NBC Sports Group is that you're learning from every single sport as we go. Like they're doing the Belmont in the coming weeks. We'll have learnings from this. So we can all lean in on what everybody's doing. But it's darn complicated.
I'm sure.
But, we got to get sports back on TV, and we're all excited to get back to work.
And what differences will we see if you're just a golf watcher, not knowing any of the production? Do you know anything that we'll see sort of just as viewers that will seem different in a post-pandemic world?
I think it's not what you're going to to see, but what are you going to hear, or what are you not going to hear? Because without fans, think about it, you're not going to hear the applause when a puck goes in. How is a player going to react without that, goosing of the applause of the fans as they walk up the 18th hole? And so that's going to feel different, be different. What audio can we hear from the players? Can we mic the players? So all those plans are being made. How can we enhance and innovate the broadcast to make up for the fact that it's going to sound different?
You're going to hear birds.
Exactly. Yeah. We may have to pipe in those bird sounds, Jensen.
Well, I'm just happy. I'm just happy we're not going to hear people yelling "Baba Booey" on drives.
No mashed potatoes.
No mashed potatoes, exactly.
But then the question is, do you want to have a Ryder Cup without fans? Because they're such an integral part of all this. So it's to be determined, but I think we all want to see our favorite players in all sports get back.
Well, that's true. People are clearly fiending for golf. The two charity events that we've had, the match with Peyton and Tiger Woods and Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson, was the most watched golfing event in cable history if you're listening to Turner. They said about 6 million viewers live. The TaylorMade driving relief brought in more than 10 million for charity. It seems like this is a sport that's going to lead the way. Did you see that happening? Did you ever think to yourself, like, wow, we really will see a bump here?
I think you're seeing it also. Part of Golf Channel is Golf Now, which is a digital tee time service, and they're finding that their numbers are through the roof, that people want to get outside after they've been cooped up for the last few weeks. And maybe, fingers crossed, that golf might even see a resurgence in participation because of this. Because as we talked about earlier, it's the perfect social distancing sport, or quarantine with your family and then go out as a force, and to get out and walk, all those things we haven't been able to do. So, I think golf with this new generation of stars has been on the precipice of, really resonating, and Tiger coming back and playing well has been a shot in the arm. And now we get this. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in golf this summer when it comes back, but also think about this fall. You're going to have this cluster of the FedEx playoffs and the major championships. So we're going to also have this goose in the fall, and then we're going to come right back out in the spring and have the Masters both in November and April. So it's going to be really fun. So you're also going to get all the great players playing a concentrated schedule. So that's what you always want to see, your favorite golfers playing every week. And I think we're going to get more of that because of the pandemic.
Well, on the less positive side from the pandemic, two very important women in sports broadcasting passed away, Phyllis George Brown and Maura Mant, two incredible people who really pioneered kind of women in this sports journalism and broadcast world. I was wondering if you could explain what either of these two women meant to you, or your dealings with either.
Yeah, I never knew Maura. She worked at ESPN, but I knew all of her friends, and I was a big fan of her work, and always heard about her leadership on the ESPYs and just how passionate she was. And when she passed away, I wanted to know more about her, so I called a number of friends and just said, tell me more about her, because I just wanted to pay tribute to what she had achieved, but also what she meant to all these people, and her pursuit of excellence. That was my takeaway, and her passion was just unparalleled. And then on the Phyllis George front, never got to meet her, but she was the reason I dreamed big. I remember in the 70s, I would sit down with my dad, and all of a sudden on the NFL Today, there was this woman. I'd never seen a woman covering sports before. And as we like to say, if you can see it, you can be it. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, maybe I could have a career in sports. So I look at her as my first role model. So I only wish I could have told her that, and I should have reached out. But nonetheless, incredible. I love all the tributes that have poured in for her.
That's great. After this, more with executive producer and president of NBC Olympics and the Golf Channel, Molly Solomon. Now let's get back to Molly. You were to be the EP and president of NBC's Olympic presentation of 2020's Tokyo Games, which is an incredible honor. It's now been postponed. We can get into details in a second, but I figured a large scale here. 1 firework cannon to 1,000 firework cannons. How far were you into pre-production at that point?
Oh, very much so. I think when you get into the spring before a summer Olympics, you're probably, 85 to 90% there, maybe even 92% there. So we were ready to go, and it was incredibly disappointing, but understandable, and it just seemed to happen so very fast. But when you look at what's happened throughout the world, how the athletes could have been ready, it was inevitable. So disappointed for the athletes and for all of the Olympic fans around the world.
And what was the timeline for you finding out things would be pushed back? Because now it's very obvious, I think. But at one time, the Olympics were truly on the fence. It was almost a pull of emergency.
Well, it's a worldwide organization, the IOC, so they're taking into account, all the athletes throughout the world, all the different countries. And if you remember in March, what was happening, it was just happening so fast. I remember being up at the Players Championship. One day we're playing golf, and the next day we've canceled, for the foreseeable future. So, the IOC was taking all that into consideration. But once you saw what was happening the world over, it really was inevitable.
And now I assume you are deep in the adjusting phase, in what has to be the most challenging part for you. What is the thing that's the hardest? I mean, just the easy question. What's the hardest for you now?
The hardest part is the wait, but I do think the anticipation now for the Olympics is gonna be even greater. I mean, the Summer Olympics it's the greatest event, I think, in sports. And now we're going to have the world coming together next July for the first time, since this pandemic. So really, it's the reemergence of this global community together in Tokyo. So I think the anticipation is going to be incredible. On an NBC scale, I find it exciting, energizing, and terrifying, the fact that we're going to be producing 2 Olympics within 6 months, because when we close the Tokyo Olympics, we have 180 days until the Beijing Winter Olympics. Yeah. And we have a Super Bowl in there, the first weekend on NBC. So you can see where this is something we haven't done. NBC, ABC used to do 2 Olympics in every year, but it wasn't quite on this mammoth of scale as we do these days with cable television. But there's something kind of fun in parallel paths. One day, from one meeting, I'll be going through the Beijing, minute by minute schedule, and then we turn to, the Tokyo venue plan. So in the course of a day, you never know what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So to me, that's energizing, but also we got a lot going on between now and February 2022.
Well, is this starting from scratch in certain cases, or did the pre-prep help you for this new date? I mean, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing I said to our team when we finished, I said, we had everything in place. We could have done this and we would have done gangbusters, but now you've got the gift of time. So when you look back at all your preparations, there had to be a decision or two where you're like, that's good enough, but could it be better? So we've really taken that, and, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but we've got, I think we've got some new and innovative ways to energize the coverage, and we can pull it off, but, use the gift of time. And frankly, the world's changed. The way we just talked about production and how we produce things. So that's going to influence the way we produce the Tokyo Games and the stories of the Tokyo Games.
Yeah. And so much of your success in your entire career has been with telling these athletes' stories. And I wonder, are you going to be keeping in touch with them throughout this pause and creating content with them in quarantine, or with them sort of building a new schedule to get it done in 2021? I assume, as someone who is clearly not very athletic, I assume that these people who are Olympic athletes, these are incredible talents with a schedule that they were sticking to. I mean, it has to be weird for them, and I assume you're going to be, following them in that.
They're trying to stay in shape, because depending on who you are and what sport you're doing, like a new sport in Tokyo is called sport climbing. And I was watching some of these videos of the U.S. sport climbers trying to stay in shape, climbing all over, their staircases and things like that. And other swimmers have created, pools in their backyard to stay in shape. So there's been so many things. I'm sure you've seen the Simone Biles videos. So if it's part of their story and overcoming adversity to get back there, it sure is going to be part of our coverage. And what's interesting about another year, it's going to affect different people in different ways, right? You're going to have these teenagers that may not have been there that get the gift of time. They get another year that are going to show up at trials and make that team. Right. And there's others that are fighting against father time. And will they make the team? So everybody's going to have, it'll be interesting to see if it's helping, is it hurting, but it's definitely going to affect affect the teams. And, I say a prayer every night for Simone Biles' hamstrings, obliques, everything, that she can keep it together for one more year.
Right.
I feel really confident in her and Katie Ledecky, but you just hope for the best for all these people that were peaking at just the right time in 2020, and can they be at their best in 2021?
With Olympic coverage, you guys spend so much time and resources and money knowing who the stars are going to be even ahead of time. Obviously, there's always some underdogs that pop up. But are you concerned at losing stars, in the way that you guys have set up coverage? Like, is that a concern for you?
You always lose somebody during the Olympic trials. Somebody that was supposed to make the team has a bad day or has a bad week. You just have to hope for the best, but there's a number of stories going into the Olympics, and it's going to be okay. But remember, is this too old for you, Dan and Dave?
Please.
Oh my gosh,
I think I still have, by the way, I think I still have a Dan and Dave Nike shirt somewhere.
Right? I mean, so those are the kind of things that happen, but that's also the beauty of the trials, right? That some unknown has this amazing race and gets to go to the Olympics and fulfills a lifelong dream. But sure, that's a problem. But like I said, you hope for the best for some of these really terrific stories, these people that are kind of finishing their career, and you want them to go out on top. I know I want Allison Felix, the sprinter, to make the team and compete in front of her child and see if she can win some more medals. So there's so many great stories. And now as a mom, there's so many moms like a Carrie Jennings, go back again and see what they can do in their 40s. It's amazing.
Well, as we start wrapping up, we like to end these podcasts with something positive and then some dumb suggestions I have for you. But first, is there anything that you feel that we've adapted to during the pandemic that, you hope we take with us once everything is clear? Something that we found in a crisis, but we should have forever?
No, I want to go back to phone calls, Jensen. What's with all the Zoom and the team calls? I don't want to be seen on all these calls. I want to go back to old-fashioned phone calls.
I agree with you. I read an article about how plastic surgeons are getting more requests through email, and they think it's because we're seeing ourselves in the Zooms.
I mean, right? Don't you not want to look at yourself in the corner? Like, you want to look at everybody, and then you look at yourself and like, oh my gosh, I forgot to put makeup on. And then you go back and then you realize you forgot to put on pants, but thank God they can't see.
Yeah, the whole thing is messed up. I love that answer. Okay, so we will wrap it up with some suggestions. I know you don't need any help at the Golf Channel. Come on, what am I thinking here? But I did think, who knows? Maybe I'll say something and it can stick with you. So I had 3 ideas, maybe Golf Channel moving forward, if you want to hear them.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right, great. No fans. Maybe some people are going to miss the hooting and hollering from the gallery. I'm not sure I will, but I want to suggest to you that if you're looking for sounds, I want you to incorporate one guy. He can obviously stay very far away from any players or any cameraman or whatever, and he'll still get his yells heard. It's character actor Joe Flaherty. Do you know him?
No.
Okay, Joe Flaherty, best known as the guy who yells, "You're not going to sink that putt, jackass," in Happy Gilmore. And you can employ him. He's obviously very open. He'll take work. It's a great pop culture little wink. I mean, it might get annoying after 18 holes.
We could just have him standing on like the 10th hole, and he could say that. What do you think? Oh, that's a great idea. It's kind of like a cameo.
There you go.
It's a cameo.
Cameo, right? Joe Flaherty.
Okay,
that's my first
Joe
one.
Flaherty. Thank you. I didn't know his name. I appreciate it.
First one. Let's say a second wave hits. God forbid. God forbid a second wave hits. We don't even want to think about it, but it's something that's been thrown out there, and we have sports canceling all over again. I'm thinking, would you televise golfers playing a golf video game?
We actually have thought about that, and there's, if you go online, it's actually been happening. The LPGA has been doing a lot of it, and they've had their, it's a very international tour, and they've had, players on 4 continents playing video games. So yes, and in simulators, we're also working on a simulator game.
Even better. See, I see like Jordan Spieth and Justin Rose, and maybe Adam Scott, and like a Buffalo Wild Wings with a company credit card. Let him go at Golden Tee.
Agree.
Okay,
I'm
good.
on board.
All right, good. I'm 2 for 2. Here's the last one. A lot of attention on ESPN's The Last Dance, and for good reason. 6 million people watching it live or whatever. I think a second screen experience for the PGA and Golf Channel could really capitalize on the popularity during tournaments, or really any round of golf that you're televising live, right? You can have a small screen pop up in the corner, and it's modern day Michael Jordan, and he's just actively making bets on every hole.
You know what? Somebody said he should be the next match guest, right?
Yes.
He should play with Tiger.
See?
And maybe Barkley's with,
Oh, now you're
Barkley's
selling.
with Mickelson.
This
See?
is why
There
you're where
go.
you are, and I'm talking about Buffalo Wild Wings with golf video games. Molly, thank you so much for talking to me, and be safe and healthy, and can't wait to see your work in both golf and the Olympics when we're all safe and ready.
Thanks for the invitation, Jensen. I appreciate it.
After this break, in the latest installment of FANDEMIC, we'll check in with Jayhawks diehard and fellow Clippers head Luka Jones from Hulu's Shrill. Right now, Feeding America is working tirelessly to ensure our most vulnerable populations, like students who are out of school, the elderly, individuals whose jobs are impacted, and low-income families, continue to have access to food and other needed resources during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Feeding America Food Bank Network is committed to serving communities and people facing hunger in America, and their greatest need is donations and support of local food banks. This podcast is committed to donating a portion of the proceeds from the show to Feeding America, and we hope that you can join us in this effort too. Find out how you can help at feedingamerica.org/COVID-19. Now my check-in with Luka Jones from Hulu's Shrill and diehard rock chalk Jayhawk. Hello, Luka.
How's it going?
I'm doing, I guess, as well as I can. I have been doing this podcast mostly about the pandemic, but we now seem to be facing even larger global problems. It truly has become that part at the end of SimCity where like it's an earthquake and a tornado and Godzilla and all the things at once.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, right?
It's brutal, but I wanted first to check in with you, see how your quarantine has been going and what it's like for you. Because you, like I, sports fan in comedy and acting.
Yeah.
We don't have sports to even look at. What has it been like for you?
It's just been a little bit of a different life temporarily. And not that it's the most important thing in the world, but like it's really shown me how oddly dependent on sports watching I am. When they canceled the seasons or paused the seasons, I was like, oh, that's when quarantine really hit home.
I do feel too, like it does, especially the NBA season, which I know you and I are both uber fans of, but like, it's like if I picked up a book and got to like the 8th chapter and there were 12 of them and I just went, can you burn this? Like, I don't want to know how it ends at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess too, like, there's these rumors flying around the city that like the Clippers are practicing and that the Lakers are practicing, like sort of secretly. And it was supposed to be, especially as an LA guy myself, it's like, it was supposed to be really this huge Western Conference battle. And I don't even know if they come back, will it mean anything to me?
I think it'll mean something to me, but it'll be more like something that's comforting.
Right.
That's all. Whereas like before, it would have been something like you could project out like, oh yeah, we could have the Western Conference Finals all on Staples Center.
Right.
And so for that to like keep looking like it's probably going to happen up until the suspension of the season was like really exciting. And it would have been like such a fun LA thing. And if they play against each other in Orlando or whatever happens, if anything happens, like obviously that's like just not as interesting.
Yeah, the Clippers with Kawhi trying to break the curse. The Lakers with LeBron in the season where Kobe Bryant passes away will be in Orlando with no fans.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Not as cool.
Not as cool at all. And you went to a big sports college, right?
I went to the University of Kansas for college. I was a big basketball fan. I mean, we went to the football games. It was all about basketball there. And then I went to grad school at USC. And even though grad school is not the same as college, I did go to like a bunch of USC football games, but mostly I'm like a Kansas basketball guy. Like that was like a religion there.
Yeah. And now with no March Madness, I mean, that is still, to me, that feels oddest.
That's actually the worst thing, because as excited as I was to have like the Clippers, I think definitely go to the conference finals. Not that it matters. Again, I can keep saying that. It doesn't matter compared to everything that's happening. It feels silly to act like it matters. You just remind yourself, like, whenever something actually big and important and horrible or whatever is happening, that they're different.
But I wonder, not to devil's advocate it, but it is something that I've thought about a few times, right? So I've thought about this a lot. And we've looked to, right? So we obviously, everyone watched The Last Dance, and we were a lot of dumbfounded reaction from people who didn't know how Michael Jordan had said the Republicans buy shoes and didn't want to put himself on the front line of social justice. And, having LeBron not have the kind of eyes on him that we would have near the finals or the playoffs when this whole thing is going down. And I mean, we look to athletes nowadays, and it used to be kind of like, oh, don't do that. Now I feel like I need LeBron. Like I need Chris Paul and these guys who've become very vocal. I almost feel like pulling athletes out of this equation has actually affected us when dealing with these race issues.
That's a good point.
And one of the things I've learned from doing the podcast too is like talking to athletes, and then also just sort of like talking to people about what I'm doing in the last, few months and talking to everybody, is it has become, and I know you and I both have watched, sports since we were kids, and I was a huge Mets guy and a Dodgers guy growing up, and especially with the Mets years, my parents were like scared that Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry were going to become role models of mine, and not because of their race, but because we kept being told like those athletes are addicts or whatever it is. And then even in cases like players that I really like Will Clark seemed like a real kind of douchebag. And my parents were like, oh, don't love Will Clark.
That's funny.
And so I wonder now, I mean, I would love, if my son's turning 1, I would love if he looked to LeBron James as an idol, or any of these basketball players who've been incredible role models. Who were your guys growing up? Did you have athletes that you were like your favorites?
I did. I mean, I've always been like a Kansas fan because my parents went there. And I wanted to say, like, the cancellation of the NCAA tournament was like, we were number 1. We're the unanimous number 1.
Yeah.
We were going to win the national championship, and it's over now. So I still think we should get a banner, but whatever. So, like, Danny Manning was this guy that, like, I know he's not a superstar, but, like, he was a superstar to me in college in 1988 national championship with Kansas. And happened to play for the Clippers, who I ended up, being a fan of after moving here. When I was a little kid, I was in Chicago and the suburbs, and like I was a Cubs fan. My dad would bring me there, and like I was a Ryan Sandberg guy.
Oh yeah.
And then a bunch of people, Rick Sutcliffe and Leon Durham and the Bull or whatever. And
I was a Shannon Dunston guy.
Oh yeah, I loved him at shortstop.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
He was a baller. Between him and Mark Grace, there was like a great late 80s kind of connection in the infield.
And that connects with like the two teams you're talking about, like the Mets I obviously hated of that era. And that was like the mid 80s, and like and also the Giants with Will Clark beat them in the 89 division series.
Yeah.
I love those guys. I mean, I was a big Jordan fan because I was from Chicago originally before we had to move to Denver. You brought up Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. I was a huge fan of Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And I remember like getting pretty fired up for him when there was a controversy over whether or not he was allowed to pray during the national anthem. But also he was just like a beautiful shooter and a beautiful player.
Yeah, I've been vocal because he was, and it's so weird what you pick up on as a kid, but like I had even heard, during the Chris Jackson days that he suffered from obsessive compulsive disorder, and I had it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that's the only person in sports. There was a couple guys, like I think maybe Jim Eisenreich had some sort of tic or something, and I remember them saying it was tied into OCD, and I was like, tell me more, like screaming from my seat.
Absolutely.
But Mahmoud, for some reason, was very open, and he would like, it would take like 30 minutes for him to tie his shoes. And like, you heard that he couldn't leave the gym till it left his fingertips perfectly. So sometimes he was there till like 2 a.m. And I was like, oh, that's why I love him. I'm actually relating to him.
And when he was a kid, I mean, I think I most certainly had OCD tendencies. I don't know if I had the disorder as like clinically defined, but I had like a lot of things where I had to like touch them a certain amount of times, or like, evens or odds. And that was, I didn't like talk to people about it, but like when I read his story, like he'd sometimes be crying when he was growing up, like just trying to make a certain amount of like swishes, right? Like, and he couldn't leave psychologically, like couldn't leave the court and go home until he got it right. And I definitely related to that. And I thought it's not quite that extreme, but to the sort of like compulsion. And it's too bad that we weren't able to like talk more about that then, not that they didn't cover it in some of the stories about him. And then he found some peace with religion.
Yeah.
And that was interesting too.
But I just realized as a Kansas fan, that means you had an Embiid fandom in college.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's so lucky.
I know. The Embiid Wiggins year because they both only played their freshman year. That was like definitely a possible national championship team. And like the main reason they didn't get to the Final Four was because Embiid already had back problems, and he very understandably sat the tournament out.
Yeah. And that's why I didn't really know him that well, because I depend on the tournament to sort of get me up on at least the top 10 picks. If it's not, if it's not Wiggins or, obviously like a Zion or something, I have to, the guy from Cameroon isn't necessarily on my radar as much as it should be. So
he grew so much in his freshman year. He was like, all of a sudden you saw like, oh, this guy, he would have been the number one pick if his back wasn't, instead of Wiggins. Not that Wiggins didn't deserve it. I mean, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I think the right people knew how good he could be even back then.
Yeah.
And it was just about like, but is he going to stay healthy? Like, like it is now kind of. He's amazing.
Oh, he's amazing. Wiggins, it's so funny too, because we, as Clippers fans, Olo Akanji was always right up top for everyone, being like, worst first pick. It's like Wiggins truly may have taken, I mean, I guess Bennett also, but like Bennett was so bad, and Wiggins obviously hasn't lived up to his potential as much as he should.
But I don't think Wiggins is all, I mean, I don't like to talk too much shit about people. Maybe it's just me being a whim. Like I'm happy for Michael Akanji that he got to like be the first pick. And like, I get, and Greg Oden and all that, and I'm glad they got their money and everything's fine. But like, I think Wiggins is better than both of those guys, but he definitely didn't live up to the number one pick. I'm glad for him that he's, I think, on the Warriors now.
Yeah, he's currently on Golden State, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, I think once they get their team back and they've got like Curry back and, I mean, he's just going to be the third option maybe?
Third option, yeah, third.
Yeah, so that's like a better place for him. And under Kerr, I think he could still have there's this guy that I really loved this guy. That's a weird way to start this. Like Chauncey Billups, I really loved as a kid because he grew up in Denver where, again, like I partially grew up and I saw him play in high school. And then I saw him play in college when he played for Colorado and came to campus. And then like he got picked really high by the Celtics with Pitino. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't like work out. And then he bounced around a little bit. I think he went to Denver for a second, but then he ended up in Detroit.
Yeah.
There's like 3 places though. It looked like his career might not work out. Mm-hmm. And then he ended up in Detroit with Larry Brown, who I love, Kansas. And he was a finals MVP when they beat the Lakers, and then had like a great run there. And then had a great like couple years or whatever with Melo. Very good couple of years with Melo in Denver, when he replaced Iverson and brought them to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
He's an example of somebody, in my mind, who was like a really good college player, like Wiggins was, and had like a little bit of trouble at the beginning of his career because he just, for whatever reason, and I hope that Wiggins is like that in this new situation. I think sometimes we forget. I mean, what chance did Olo Akanji have? Not that he would have been great somewhere else, but you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't in the greatest organization, and I love the Clippers.
Yeah,
I love the Clippers, but he wasn't in the greatest organization.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think Wiggins still averages like just under 20 points. I think it's just people have such high expectations for him, and
he was the number one pick.
Yeah,
he was the number one pick. I mean, but people also have to like remember Jordan was the third pick.
Yeah,
I mean, the number one pick and the number like 3 pick are like kind of the same.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of drafts anyway.
Basically, it's all crazy achievements. That's the thing during draft days. Yeah. I'm like, that guy got picked number 8 in the world for his class.
Yeah.
It's still
congratulations.
Yeah. you, no matter what. Well, dude, I hope to see you at a Clippers game soon. I don't know when in life we'll all be back at an actual stadium or arena watching something, but dude, stay healthy and keep your eye out for sports.
Thank you. You too. And thanks for having me.
The No Sports Report is produced and distributed by Treefort Media. The show is executive produced by Kelly Garner, Lisa Ammerman, Matthew Kugler, and me, Jensen Karp. Tom Monahan is our senior audio engineer and sound supervisor, with production and editing by Jasper Leak. Additional production help from Tim Schauer, June Rosen, and Haley Mandelberg. Our theme music is composed by Spilkus. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please subscribe, rate us, and review us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please visit feedingamerica.org. If you're able to make a donation, any amount makes a difference, and you can learn more about other ways you can help on their website. For more information on the No Sports Report, links to the socials, and for show transcripts for our hearing impaired listeners, go to treefort.fm. Be safe and be well. The No Sports Report is a production of iHeartRadio and Treefort Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.